Okay. All right. So welcome. What I wanted to talk about during today's job seeker support group is the fact that we all need to be in such sales mode when you are looking for work. And that could be difficult for us just in general, right? Like pitching yourself, right? And selling yourself. But that is even more difficult, I find, in during a time where you're getting a lot of no's potentially, right? Or maybe you're coming out of the trauma of being fired, right? Or the trauma of a toxic workplace, right? You've had potentially some rupture in your life, uh, and you are now embarking on change, which is scary, and you have to sell yourself. So again, this thing of pitching ourselves and our, why we're great and why you should take a chance on us is already difficult. And then we have to do it in a scenario that has a bunch of other complicated things that are part of it. And if you've come to any of my sessions before, I mean, I'm always very real with everybody. So hopefully I'm not depressing you all, but I just want to call out, I know how difficult that this can be. And I don't think there's any way to really hack selling yourself. But as I was reflecting on, the talk for today, I did divide it into 3 phases that I just want to go over with you all. Would love, love, love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Whether you're here live, put it in the chat, or if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube or in Circle, comment below. Okay, so kind of the 3 phases of, quote, selling yourself, right? First phase, I would say, is you got to sell yourself to yourself. Okay. So there's sort of like convincing yourself that you're worth it, or at least figuring out, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but like, we can't wait till we believe in ourselves to pitch ourselves, because otherwise we're going to be waiting a long time. Okay. Second phase is figuring out your wins, right? What do we talk about in this experience of looking for work? And then the third phase is the actual telling of this story, the articulating it. Now, of course, there's lots of phases within that, right? Like you tell your story differently to different people. You're going to express it on a website versus LinkedIn versus a resume, cover letter, interview, networking. I mean, there's all these different environments in which you will be expressing yourself. And so don't let that overwhelm you. Just like look at it as all of this is just practice. Okay. Like you are practicing. When you hear yourself pitch yourself in one dimension, you're going to just continually improve it. Okay. I mean, how many of you all, have looked back at old cover letters, or, even if you've started your own business, right? The elevator pitch, it only gets better over time because you continue to refine it, because you have to hear feedback from people. You have to hear yourself say it out loud, right? So just know in this process of pitching yourself, there is an inherent element of time that is necessary to improve it. So just let go of the pressure to get it perfect, to nail it, or any of that. Like it's just practice. So when you go in for that interview, you may be thinking, this is the interview for my dream job. You're practicing for your next dream opportunity. Okay. All right. So let's talk about selling yourself to yourself first. First and foremost, you are a human being, not a human doing. Meaning, I know you will need to express the things that you've done to get the job you want. However, you are being hired for you in your humanity. So who are you? Okay. Like just as a person, this is when people start having existential crises. Stay with me for a minute. Okay. Don't go there. But who are you just as you show up in this world? Your empathy, your patience, you being detail oriented, you being enthusiastic, curious, open-minded, resilient. Okay. I get chills because we take this shit for granted, but it is our entire reason for, like, it is how people experience us. So again, we will get to the point where you need to pitch yourself on, here are my wins and the impact I've had on the business bottom line. We're not there yet though. Just focus on, can I really get to know who I am, again, as a human being and not just a human doing? And then seeing how those qualities have impacted the work you do and how you do your work. Another thing I want to just underscore is it's not just about being an expert. Okay. This is for my friends here who are maybe new to the workforce or want to pivot, right? They're like, I don't have traditional job experience. They're just in constant, like, I don't have what they're looking for. Okay. Life experience counts. So it's not just about expertise. It's about experience, meaning there are so many transferable skills. So before you start second guessing yourself, just go deep into your past, your entire past, personal, professional, whatever. Just what kind of like human life experience have I had and how did I get through all of this, right? Another way I'd like to think about, again, human being, not just human doing, who we are, obstacles we've overcome, I think are a really great place to mine for fabulous stories that you can ultimately tell to a prospective employer. By the way, if I'm sitting kind of like funny, it's for those who are new to this, I have a cat that's on my chair that I'm trying not to disturb. Okay. So do think about in the past couple of years, anything that was difficult. Now, does it have to have been difficult for you? Not necessarily. It could have been a business obstacle and you actually dealt with it in a beautiful way. Fabulous. That's great. But again, ultimately, when we are pitching ourselves, we have to tell a compelling story. And when you focus on a challenge or an obstacle, again, whether it's personal, or a business challenge, that's going to just set it up really nicely to be that compelling story. Okay. So I would love for you to think about that. In terms of, do you have to believe in how great you were, whatever? Just accept that like we're always going to be hard on ourselves to some degree because that in our subconscious, we think that's our way of improving, right? If we're finding, here are my faults, I'm going to improve. I mean, we can have a whole other conversation that's more about therapy work that we maybe need to do to be less hard on ourselves, but just acknowledge that like, no matter how many achievements you rack up, the goalpost will always keep moving. Like, just same thing with imposter syndrome. Like oftentimes we feel like we need to prove to ourselves, that we've done the amazing work to be amazing. But if your standards are high for yourself, then whatever next level you get to, you're not going to be necessarily thinking, oh, how great am I? I accomplished this. No, you're going to be eye on the prize. What's the next thing I can do? So knowing that it'll be never ending search for your own greatness, this is when we just need to be really freaking proud of ourselves that we got through obstacles. Again, it didn't have to be that it was hard for you. It could have been a business obstacle that you helped solve, right? But you have gotten through it. Okay, so that's my little like sell yourself to yourself. Now, I'm going to talk about figuring out your wins. If y'all could find the original job description when you first joined your company, and by the way, for those who've been unemployed for a while, no worries. Again, just find like a previous job description if you can. Then I'd love for you to reflect on if you were to write a job description based on what you actually did. Okay. If you were hiring to replace yourself, what would that look like? And then compare the two, the original job description when you were first hired and a new job description based on what you actually did. Notice, I'm going to guess, notice that you did a lot more. That the job really changed, right? Maybe you took on the responsibilities of multiple people. Maybe you took, lots of initiative or whatever, put out so many fires, right? I think in the scope change between the original job description and the one that you then create, you're going to find excellent stories to tell when you're in that pitch mode of yourself and your greatness. Okay. But I do want you to filter it through what you actually want to do moving forward, what you're proud of. Because let's say you come to me and I'm hiring, okay? I'm not actually hiring. I wish I was, but we don't have enough money for that. But let's say I'm hiring and you come to me and you tell me about this amazing win that you had at work, right? But you didn't actually like doing it. Don't tell that to me, because when I hear this story of your fabulousness, I'm going to think to myself, oh, great, I'm going to have her do more of that. So, really, again, it's not just like what you did that impacted the business, but did you give a shit? Did you enjoy it? Is it what you want to do more of moving forward? Are you excited about it? Did you even care? So just make sure that is first and foremost, you're tailoring what you say, not just to what they need to hear, but to what you actually want to do. Okay. Another thing that I think would be helpful to get both perspective on yourself, but also it will help you be hired, is if you could think about people in your life who could maybe give you some quote testimonials. Okay. Going back to that, because you do this on LinkedIn, right? With recommendations. If you could ask somebody, a previous colleague or a boss or a mentor, hey, like what did you feel was my best contribution to our team? Or how did you experience me? Or, just again, a way of you getting some perspective on yourself, but like a product review. I mean, hey, listen, like, why would you not put a testimonial in your cover letter, in your resume? Because we're telling our future bosses, believe me, when I say to you, I'm detail oriented, you're supposed to believe me. I mean, it's a lot more compelling when it's my previous colleague. Again, doesn't just have to be a boss, but somebody else also saying she's detail oriented. So I would love for y'all to think about who in your past or present, right? Who could give you that testimonial? And then we can figure out later, where do you integrate it? Okay. And just in general, keep that somewhere. So when you're having moments where you're a little bit lost or not feeling great about yourself, or like, go find that. I call it a brag book. I've heard people call it a smile file, and read through those testimonials, because sometimes we can't trust the voices in our head, because again, they're sort of programmed to be really critical on us. So like, let yourself feel the praise from others, right? So that's one thing. Okay. And also do track these things over time, right? When you do something and it gets a good result, or not just even when it gets a good result, but when there was like a process to it, write it down, because you don't want to be in a place where you're interviewing and you have to remember this stuff. Like, it's going to just put a lot more pressure on you. Okay. Then there's and by the way, happy to answer questions along the way. Then there's the articulating it, right? So the selling yourself to yourself, the figuring out your wins, and then the articulation of it. Some of you have heard this from me before, but I'm going to say it again. I love, as I prepare to tell the story of a win, I imagine myself like I am writing a screenplay, okay? And I'm the main character. And I would love for you all to write this out. The reason I'm having you do this is because, again, our default is to be so hard on ourselves, but also we just jump over details very easily. And I think there's a lot of richness in the details when we tell our story, okay? And also, by the way, when you write out details, you're going to see patterns in things. Like, everything is data. Everything is interesting. So don't just jump into telling the story, but like, really write it out. And I love to use this framework called the STAR method. Okay. It's an acronym. It's STAR. It's setting the scene. It's the task. It's the action. It's the result. However, I'm going to go in a little bit more detail with y'all. Okay. So for setting the scene of this win that you've had, right? Because you're pitching me on, this thing that you did. Can you try to reflect on what was at stake? Because there's always something at stake. There is, right? Just as a business owner, I know this. Like, whenever we, do a campaign or put a product out in the world, like, there's a risk associated with it. We're taking a bet on it. So whatever it is that you did, if you can figure out, what was at stake in some capacity, that can be very helpful. By the way, I love seeing in the chat that people are being specific about what they're looking for and sharing their LinkedIns. It's great. Give us some context to the win, this thing that you did, like who, what, when, where, why. Okay. Was there no resources, no budget that was given? You had a 24-hour turnaround time. The company downsized. It was just up to you, or, whatever. Okay. Then there's the task. What were you asked to do, or what did you take on? Action. Okay. What did you do? Here's the part that I find very interesting that many of us skip over. It's not just what did you do, but it's how did you do it? Because that allows me, as the prospective employer, to visualize what you could do for us, or how what you're talking about is transferable, right? It's showing me your process, your work ethic, your problem, your ability to problem solve, your efficiency. And for those particularly who are new to the workforce, or who are pivoting, who are maybe looking at their situation as if they're at a bit of a disadvantage, I want you to really underscore that you could learn fast, that you did learn fast, right? Or that you were, able to figure out solutions on your own. Okay. So that me, as the prospective employer, I don't feel so worried that the learning curve is going to really take away from the team, or, somebody just asked, do we get a replay? Yes, I'll be sending that later today. And then the final aspect of telling the story of your win is, of course, the result, what happened. However, let me tell you 2 extra things. It's not just what happened. It's what did you learn from it? Again, this is allowing me to visualize your potential, because we all want to hire people who are coachable. So if you at the end of it were like, you know what, this made me realize this thing about myself or about the industry, or I changed the way that I worked after it, or I optimized my process, or I'm like, wow, this person is introspective. They're able, they're not stubborn in their ways. Again, they're coachable. So that's really great, but also impact, business bottom line. How did what you did and how you did it make the company money or save the company money? Now, depending on what you do for a living, that could be easier said than done, right? If you're a salesperson, of course, you can say, I brought in this account. But for other folks, how do you tell that story? My response to that would actually be with another question, which is, who can help you figure that out? Or the other part I would then challenge you with is, do you know all the ways that your company, your previous company, made money? Right? Do you know all the ways? So, I would start there. Also, like, were you very clear on, how your boss measured success, and what they recognized and rewarded? How did the work you do fill that? I'm happy to, if y'all have any more specific questions based on that. This can seem a little abstract unless we have exact examples. Let me give you just one quick one right here. So I gave a talk on salary negotiation at Vice. This is a while ago. And when I talked about how you really need to know how you impacted the business bottom line, there was somebody in the audience who raised her hand and said that, she was a filmmaker, and she just really, the only way she could think to quantify her impact was number of views on her videos, right? But didn't know how else to be able to tell the story of her impact. And so I asked the room, can anyone here help her? And a woman raised her hand and said, I'm in sales, or I pitch sponsors. So her job was a little easier to be able to articulate her value. But she said, I could tell you how I use videos to close sponsorship deals. Oh, interesting. Okay. Now, could this filmmaker, could she say specifically, my videos have been used in X number of presentations that then closed Y dollars of these sponsors? Like, she could never get to the place where she could be that specific, but she could speak to her understanding of her place in the company's financial ecosystem. I know the company's made X dollars, or it could be abstract, right? Generally in this ballpark, they've made X dollars in sponsorship this year. And I talked to, one of the salespeople, and I know that she uses video to sell sponsorship, right? So it's again, as a prospective employer, I want to see from you that you understand that you are not a cog in the wheel, and that you think in terms of your team, you think in terms of the company goals, you think in terms of growth in lots of ways, right? So of course you're very dedicated to what you do, but you know that you're not a silo. Okay. So I just find, again, when I'm looking at people's LinkedIns and I'm looking at their resumes, and they have these bullet points of, and this might be some of you guys, they have bullet points on bullet points of, here's all the things that I did. And I'm like, but A, anybody can say that. B, that doesn't tell me anything about you, like who you are, and again, because anybody can say it. I mean, quite frankly, anybody can copy and paste these things. You don't stand out to me, right? And so the ones that do go into more detail about their business impact, or at least are able to tie what they did and how they did it and who they are to the business bottom line, they just inherently stand out because it's unfortunately unusual. So really challenge yourself to, I would make this a priority, figuring out how to tie your wins to the business bottom line in some capacity. And in telling the story of how you did something, and like back to my point earlier of like, it's not just human doing, it's human being, right? When you talk about things like your enthusiasm, right? Or your, positivity, or, the fact that you're like a cheerleader for your team, then help connect the dots between that and your work. So it's not just, well, I know I'm an enthusiastic person. hi, nice to meet you. Well, that's kind of weird, right? No, I recognize that my enthusiasm, is one of my superpowers. And here's how I've seen it impact my team, right? I've gotten more people to be motivated to work faster. And in that saves the company money, right? Because time is money, right? So again, do you need to know the exact numbers for everything or no? But it's just showing me as a prospective employer that you empathize with the business bottom line. Okay. And that includes, by the way, contribution to the company culture, whether it's official or not, whether you ran the employee resource group, it doesn't matter. If you had any kind of informal mentoring, where you helped other people, like talk about that. Talk about that. Okay, so I'm almost at 9:30, which is fabulous. That's my cutoff time to, for me to stop hearing the sound of my own voice and to hear from more of you guys. But there's more to talk, obviously, about how do you, quote, sell yourself, pitch yourself. I mean, ultimately, you are going to be filtering or tailoring your story based on who it is you are talking to and where it is that you are applying. So you're going to ultimately have a cover letter and a resume that is a template, right? That's the foundation of it. But I do urge you all to think about how could you maybe tweak them for each opportunity you go after, because you're going to be integrating keywords that you've seen, from their job description, from their website, from informational interviews you've had, right? Even in networking events, right? When you introduce yourself to somebody, there could be lots of things that you talk about yourself, but what do you think will resonate most with the person who's hearing you, right? And usually that has to do with, well, what do they care about? What do they what do they reward? What are their goals? Where is the company growing? Where are they investing in? Who gets promoted? That's a great thing to do some research on, by the way. When you're looking for job opportunities, go take a look at the LinkedIn of that company's website and just see how long people stay there. How long does it take for them to move up? Are they big on title changes or maybe not? Also, what's the sort of person who gets promoted? Are they all white and male or, do they all go to Ivy Leagues? Like, it's just good information for you to know. But don't stress too much because I've heard this from some of you. Don't stress too much if you feel like, but there's so many different things I can say. What do I say? Like you feel this need that you have to pick one version of yourself that you express to the world? No. You have your version that is you are most at home with yourself, but depending on who you're talking to, yeah, just naturally, you're going to only express, certain parts of yourself. Just like you might change what you wear based on if you've been invited to a fancy event, you might not show up wearing jeans, right? So just kind of think of the story you tell about yourself being like clothes that you put on. You still have a certain set of items in your wardrobe and you love all of them. Otherwise, you've gotten rid, you would have sold them or whatever, So just don't, it's more like, just do the work on having the foundation of your story, but have fun with it too in the way that you tell it. All right. So I would love to answer some questions. And then after I answer some questions, I may, I'll stop recording and we can have more of an intimate conversation. Just, the 53 of us who are here live. I'll start with the questions that were submitted here in the chat, and then I'll go back to some previous questions in, earlier job seeker events that we did. So let's see. Okay. All right. The question is from Constance. What are your best tips for not self-sabotaging yourself and believing in yourself during the job search process? Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, if we can do some therapy work, that is always helpful. So I would really try to break down, okay, let me think about this. It is a lot easier for us to recognize what's not working than what is working. So my first invitation to you, Constance, for anybody else who's feeling this is what is the positive intention behind your self-sabotage? Because we don't do things unless we think that they're working for us in some capacity. So maybe I would start with, what are all of the ways that I self-sabotage, okay? Whether it's not applying for a job or procrastinating or beating myself, just being very hard on myself, whatever, okay? So, and if you feel comfortable sharing more, I would love to hear from you. Then, instead of trying to fix it or fight it, invite yourself to have a dialogue with this self-sabotaging part. Why are you doing this? What's your positive intent for this. Okay. And sometimes just acknowledging the positive intent, it allows you to, again, stop getting into fight mode with it. You accept it, and it's easier to let it go. When you're in the fighting or the fixing, that self-sabotaging part can dig in its heels and all of a sudden become more entrenched. And you get really exasperated and tired, and then you add more self-sabotage. So start with compassion. I know that you mean well for me. It's not working for me, but why did you start doing this? When did you start doing this in my life? And again, what's the positive intent? And then, again, this is a longer process, but just very quickly, I would say being able to recognize the difference between a thought, a feeling, and an action you take. Slowing that down for yourself is going to become a lot easier. So you might be focused right now on like the self-sabotaging action, but like, can we way back up, rewind the tape? What was like the first thought or feeling that popped in that then led to the action? Okay. If you can get into the habit of recognizing and slowing down that process of thought, feeling, and action, catching yourself, again, you may find you just let it go. Okay. And just along the way, knowing this about yourself, knowing that it's going to be a lifelong journey of figuring it all out and working with it, give yourself a challenge for by the end of the week, what can I have? What can I celebrate? 100% guaranteed I can celebrate this. So don't celebrate the absence of the self-sabotage because it may still be there. So maybe let's celebrate something like, did I catch just once this week? Did I catch and slow down that process? Interesting. Did I have a different kind of dialogue with myself? I mean, I ultimately maybe still self-sabotage, but did I have a conversation with myself in a different sort of way? That's progress. Celebrate. Okay. Dora, not sure if you answered this last week, but third interview hacks, please and thank you. I've never done a third round before. Well, I would say third interview hacks. I mean, it's really, I would ask yourself, out of all the things that they've come to understand about you, what else could they possibly be looking for, about you? I mean, maybe there's nothing new that they're trying to learn. They're just, wanting to be reassured of certain things, but just put yourself in their shoes of what is it possibly that they're looking for here? What do they recognize and reward? What are their priorities? And hopefully you can figure out the answers to that by asking them those questions or by networking with other people at the company, and hopefully people will be transparent with you about that. You've clearly demonstrated to them that you have what it takes to be hired. So is it what that they're looking for is company culture fit or, so it's just, you can't tailor yourself if you don't know what you're tailoring yourself to or for. So I would just think about, are there questions that you can ask them or other people at the company or do more research to help provide you with that intel? Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, let's see. Any other questions in the chat? I'm just seeing wonderful networking with each other. That's great. Okay. Here's the question from Katie. What if most of my accomplishments under my work experience are things I don't want to do anymore? I'm transitioning roles to get back to doing stuff I love, but the accomplishments I'm passionate about are from 10 plus years ago. Is that still valid to brag about and show transferable skills? I love this question, Katie. Well, for first and foremost, for anybody who is looking at their work experience going, there's really nothing here that I was super engaged by or proud of or whatever. I would still urge you, are there stories that you can still tell that demonstrate who you are as a person? Okay. So not to say that you don't, you throw out all of those things. Like, it's like, I was a barista at Starbucks. Like, do I want to keep doing that? No, but there's like so many good little anecdotes that I could pull that demonstrate the kind of person I am. Right. So I would still say, before you throw out any of the work, traditional work accomplishments, do search within them for that, if possible. Can you still bring up stuff from 10 plus years ago? If it's related to what you're applying to, then yeah, you should. I mean, otherwise, you're leaving out something that is important for me as the prospective employer to know about you. In general, we should be talking about things that are more recent, of course. But again, if you were pivoting, but you do happen to have some applicable stuff in the way back trunk, you should break it up. However, this is for everybody. Side projects, please do them. If you don't have stuff more recently that you can talk about that lights you up, you got to create that now. Now, does that mean you need to have a successful, robust business? No, because at the end of the day, there is so much fabulous stuff you could talk about in a failure even, right? I tried to start this business, but it didn't work. But here's what I learned. Woo, I'm going to see courage, right? The resilience, the introspection, humility, right? It's a lot of great stuff there. It could be, so whether or not you're going to create your own project, you don't need to. Go help somebody else with their project. Like somebody who has an organization out there or community or whatever, if you see an opportunity to help them, to be of service, go do that. It's going to get you back into motivation mode. You're going to build more confidence because you're going to see yourself doing something you love, right? And so for you, Katie, right? Like, yeah, you might be bringing up something from 10 and plus years ago, but I do hope that you could talk about something that, hey, I've been in the meantime volunteering at this thing, right? So, and again, in my career, the most success I've had, it really came from, a lot of it did come from side projects that I did. Okay. Oh, Alexa, I absolutely adore you. They said, I recommend checking out the Internal Family System Therapy. No bad parts of the book has been really helpful. Yes, that book changed my life. And I am currently in this. It's called IFS therapy. And I'm currently have a therapist who's been trained in that modality. And it's the only therapy that has given me like the biggest breakthroughs in my life. So, this question was trying to reframe my LinkedIn header, a kind of pivot and currently consulting independent advice. Yeah, let me talk about headers for a second. Sometimes people, we think that we put the title of our job or the title that we want, but titles mean different things at different companies. This goes back to what I said earlier about when people just have bullet points about what they did. That could just be copied and pasted. It's the most generic thing. What we really want to hear is, what was the job function? What did you do? So not just, business development. It's like, okay, so within business development, what did that actually mean? And do look for job opportunities out there that are posted and see what keywords that they're using. And that's when you might want to integrate it into your LinkedIn, whether it's your header or elsewhere. But rephrase your header not as title, but as function. What did you do? And also, what are you looking for? Be explicit about that. If you feel comfortable, right? If you currently work for someone else, I'm not sure how explicit you can be about that. But you could say looking to connect with people who are wanting to do X, Y, and Z things, right? Because networking is always good, not just for you, but for your business. Wherever you're currently working, the more people like that could be potential hires for them, vendors, clients, right? Okay. So we want to be careful about what we say, but wanting to network is always good for everybody. Okay. This person asked, best affordable resource for resume overhaul, getting fresh eyes to translate decades of experience in one field, company to highlight the transferable skills. I'm great at doing this for others, but not myself. I'm a huge fan of a company called Teal, T-E-A-L, if y'all want to check them out. I think you might get, you'll enjoy them. Where should I turn when it feels like networking isn't yielding any results? I'm a career pivoter, and people say the best way to pivot is through networking, but so far my contacts don't fall through with what they promised. They're slow to respond, etc. It feels like no one is motivated to help me when I reach out. Oh, I know. I hear you. And I'm unfortunately I wish I was better. I need to be better at responding to people. Well, Jessica, I don't know how comfortable you feel in responding to me in this, but my question to you back would be, are you helping them? And are you networking when you don't need your network? Okay. This is for everybody, not just for you. Or, are we only all reconnecting with each other when we need something? Because that's going to feel transactional, right? To you and to them. Are we continually paying it forward Even things like posting on LinkedIn. Hey, like, you know, if you guys are looking for opportunities, I don't know if I can help, but post them in my comments below and let me see if I can connect you with people, right? If you get into the habit of being a connector already, like this is just what you do on an ongoing basis, you will grow your network and you'll also be able to more easily activate your network versus when you're only really like cultivating it when you need it, it's a bit late, right? Slash, you're also in a position where like, every, non-response carries so much more pressure to it. So that would be my first thing. I also would wonder if, is there a lower, a smaller ask that you could have, right? So, sometimes making an introduction for another person, that feels like a lot. So it could be, hey, could you just send me their website and I'll reach out and tell them you sent me. So is there a way to make the ask easier on them? It would be that. Then I would say to not just, rely on individuals, but really get involved in groups. But you know this because you're here, today, but also hopefully you're involved with Ladies Get Paid. So if you're putting yourself in environments where everybody who's shown up is clearly here to help each other versus going to an individual who's busy and asking, you're going to just yield, I think, more results by if coming to groups like this, and these are the people who will ultimately help you. Okay. I'm seeing so much internal family system stuff. Great. So Camille said, what should I consider to answer the job interview question? What do you need to succeed? Okay. What should I? So tell me, so this would be a question that the employer asks you. What do you need to succeed? Or Camille, are you asking them, what do you need? I guess, what do you need to succeed? Okay. Well, again, first and foremost, all your answers are based on what they need to hear from you. By the way, that doesn't mean that you're not also interviewing them. I want to be clear. Like at the end of the day, this is a relationship that does have to go both ways. Okay. But it is filtering it through, well, what do they need for you to succeed? Right. So just being clear with yourself on how they define success, right? And if what you're about to say, is it possible for them? So for example, if it's a small company and you're like, I'm making this up right now, and I know you wouldn't say this, but if you were like, I could use an executive assistant, like obviously, like they may not have the funds for that. So you don't want to say something that's like, they can't fulfill that for you. You also don't want to be bullshitty about it too, right? Like, what do you need to succeed? Oh, everybody just to be nice or whatever. My instinct would probably communication, and then pivoting to why you're really good at that, right? So yeah, you need other people to be a good communicator to you, but you recognize that it starts with you. And here are examples of ways that you have seen communication be really fabulous, that you've made it work with previous bosses or companies, right? I don't know what y'all think though. I'm just one person. Okay. I see a question here about, okay, well, actually, yeah, I like communication and good. Yeah. What else would somebody say? Whatever it is your response is to any interview question, guys, I want you to follow it up with an example, a great example from your life. So it's not just, I need communication to like communication's key. It's here's how I've been a really good communicator, or here's when communication's been difficult where I've seen it not work. However, here's what I would do differently or whatever, so that every answer to their question, they walk away with a concrete example, a great story of how you've done that thing. Otherwise, again, you're speaking in this copy and paste mode. Anybody can say communication, but not everybody can tell the story that you tell. All right, I am going to stop the record and give folks a chance to unmute in our last 15 minutes. Or if y'all want the choice of doing a breakout, we can do that as well. So I just want to say thank you to those watching the video. Please join ladiesgetpaid.com. It's free, and you'll get invites to these events and as well as our private online network. And check your emails from us because we send out discount codes too on lots of good education.